Hello once again and welcome to our Monster Mash build, which we slightly modified thanks to a video from Crush Cards. I got inspired by their build despite being in the TCG and I'm an OCG player, but their build just might work, which I will be telling you later on by the end of the video. My original build ran 3 copies of Sekka's Light, but the problem with Sekka's Light is that I don't get to run other cards, especially back row hate. Monster hate, that's easy to do, especially with a Kaiju and our Fairy Tail Luna, which works really well with removing cards from the field. But it does have the problem where players are now maining Torrential Tribute times 3, Solemn Judgments, and Solemn Strikes. So what do we do with that? And the solution I noticed is that many of my cards get banished anyway, so why not run Gren Maju? So here's the 41 card deck. A first for myself. I never usually run beyond 40 cards. So we have a set of Gren Maju, goes up 400 multiplied by the number of cards banished on your side. Then there's Ether Millions, a great way to banish cards, and it's a good way to remove problematic monsters on the field. You get to attack them, banish them face down. Gizmek Orochi. I only run 2, and this is really something that I got from that video from Crush Cards. Running 2 Orochi solves my problem of having a dead third copy of Orochi. There was a time where I almost, I did deck out with only 7 or 6 cards remaining in the deck, and this was my draw. So it was a useless card, and I had nothing else to do with it. So just 2, it really balanced the deck out. Then we have 3 Bigfoot and 3 Thunderbird from the Danger archetype. Really easy to summon, really easy to run, really easy to use, especially with cards that make you discard a card. I will show you later on what those cards are. Then if you'll notice, those are mostly level 8s except for our Gren Maju and our Ether Millions. Our Beast King, which is Alpha, really great bounce card, really easy to summon, has a fairly easy summoning condition, especially if there's a Kaiju on the opponent side of the field. I run 2 because I can't afford a third one. They're around 500, 400 pesos each now. Speaking of Kaiju, we have 2 copies of Gadarla, a great card against Tri-Brigade decks that run Gale Statue Barrier. And then there's Gamma Shell and 1 copy of Dogoran. That's our Kaiju core. They're all level 8. The non-level 8 free monster here is Dino Wrestler Pankratops. Great card. It's limited to 1 in the OCG. Pops cards, they had to limit this so that they can sell more copies of Alpha. So, thanks Konami. Then there's I really don't get the second part of the name here. Arch Nemesis Esker something something. There's another Arch Nemesis, but this is the one that we're using. It's a good card to wipe out decks that run only 1 type. There's the Orcus decks that use machines, so I summon this one, then I just declare machine, especially if there's an Orochi on my side of the field. On their turn, they can't summon anything that they could use. If they're using PKBA, the PKs or the Phantom Knights are warriors, so I just declare warrior, then they cannot summon Rongo in the next turn. Rongo is not banned in the OCG. I'm not surprised as well. It's not that strong anyway these days. Then I only run 2 copies of Fairy Tail Luna now. The reason for this is that Gren Maju gets to eat up my 1 normal summon per turn. Back in the original build, she was the only normal summoned monster, and running 3 copies was not a surprise, really easy to summon. But now it's Gren Maju, so I only run 2 copies of her. She's a good backup now. Hand traps. This is the thing that was missing in the TCG build, hand traps. So we have a full set of Haru Urara, or I forgot the English name of Haru Urara. She's Cherry Blossoms or something. A card that's unbanned in the OCG, Max C. We have our cockroaches here, so that's good draw power. Then we have Effect Veiler. Interestingly, a good card against many decks that use monsters for searches and for resummons that Haru Urara cannot handle. Then the surprise hand trap of the deck is Kuribo. This has saved my ass for so many duels. There are players that would run OTK decks that have one big tentpole monster, then multiple other monsters on the field, and Kuribo is enough to save you from that one big attack, especially if you're going against an access code talker with a minimum of 5,300 attack. They would normally just summon multiple monsters with an access code talker, then attack with the smaller ones, attack with the access code talker, you defend yourself with a Kuribo, make Yugi proud. This has frustrated so many players in our pods. Now for the spell lineup, we don't run our Sekka's Light anymore. Instead, we have Trade In because they're all level 8. And earlier I mentioned that the danger monsters, they work when they're discarded. So this is our 2-for-1 because you discard it, you draw 2 cards, and then you get the bonus of having the effect of our danger monsters for that. Orochi also works in the graveyard, so it's not a huge loss. You still get to banish 8 from the top of your deck. Speaking of banishing from the top of your deck, we have 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Banish them, draw 2. Makes your Gren Maju go big, makes your Ether Millions go big, makes another monster in the extra deck go big. I only run 2 because after so many duels with Pot of Desires, I used to run maximum 3. What happens is, activate Pot of Desires, banish 10, and then the 2 cards I draw is 1 Pot of Desires and another card that I might not be able to use. And then when I check the 10 cards that are banished, one of them is Pot of Desires. So I just run 2. Same reason with Orochi, because it can make the deck mess up. And 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. A lot of decks in the local meta set cards, and Harpies can be great to remove problematic cards that are on the spell trap zone. For the extra deck, I mentioned earlier that there was a card that goes big, and that's our Zeroboros. This is basically the only Xyz monster worth summoning in the entire deck. The others, like the Blackluster Soldier, Link Monster, Nightmare Phoenix, IP Masquerena, Celine, because we have spellcasters in the main deck, Needle Fiver, or as you guys call them, Helka Fibrax. No idea where that name comes from. They're just incidental monsters, and they're basically fodder for our Ether Millions. Then there's Chaos Ruler. It's a good card if you get to summon him, but it's just there for the sake of space. Then there's the major triplet of 97, 100, and 38. Goes into an OTK, and I pop in an 82 because sometimes I hard summon number 38 with 2 level 8 monsters, and then I go for a 97 to bring out a 100 with an 82 as my material. So this is usually hard summoned in my deck instead of being used as material. There's also number 68 and Dingirsu from the Orcust archetype. Dingirsu self-protects, that's the beauty of this card. Plus, Dingirsu can remove a card on the field without targeting. So that's the painful part about it. 68, it messes up summoning from the graveyard. Remove a material and then neither player can summon from the graveyard. So this is a good card that many people overlook, and it's a dark machine. This is also a dark machine. They're dark, so we have number 84 and number 77. 77 is a good card here. It protects itself, much like Dingirsu, but it's a big 4K monster. And is it also a machine? No, it's not a machine. It's not a machine. But nonetheless, it's a fiend. It's a fiend? Is it? Let me check the kanji here. Yep, it's a fiend. Okay. So that's our extra deck. Now for the side deck. I sided one copy of our Luna. She's there now. Then the full set of Gamma with Cyframe Driver. This is frustrating to run with a deck that banishes from the deck, because there are instances where this gets banished and these guys get empty space in the deck. So that's why I decided this one in this particular version of the deck. Artifact Lancea. Good card against decks that over banish, because sure, it's okay to banish, but there are times when you don't want stuff to get banished. So Lancea. But I only run 2. I don't run a full set. For monster control, there's these 2 copies of Lava Golem. I have encountered decks that only summon 2 monsters, and one of them is Evil Twin. And when the pink one goes out of the field, the blue one gets to summon, and the blue one is out of the field, the pink one gets to summon, so that's annoying. So I use this to remove both. But my problem becomes when this one is on the field, you cannot normal summon at all. So that steals me the chance of bringing out either my Gren Maju or my Fairy Tail Luna. In the old version of the deck, I could manage, but with in this current version of the deck, this was rather difficult to bring out. What I do is I remove Dogoran and another monster and then use this instead when I'm siding this in. And speaking of monster control, there's Nibiru. I originally main deck Nibiru, but now I just side deck it because not everyone summons 5 times in a single turn nowadays, except for Phantom Knight, Danger, Burning Abyss decks that summon Rongo that has a Bamboozling as a material. Those decks, they die from Nibiru, but now the Tri-Brigades, the Virtual Worlds, they just summon 4 times and then that's it. So they don't do this. I've had matchups where I go against Sky Strikers, this is totally useless. When I go against Eldritch decks, this is totally useless. They only summon once or twice in a row, then boom, that's it. So I just side one. For Spell Trap control, we have Twin Twisters. Works with the Dangers, it works with our Orochi, it works with almost every card. Another thing that is an issue with the deck is the budget, as in my personal budget for cards. Lightning Storm is a bit expensive. It's a really good card. You can destroy either all the monsters or all the spell and traps, but it goes for cheapest 400 pesos each all the way to 800 pesos each. That's a bit too much. So I got Hatronade. Hatronade returns all set cards on the field, set spell trap cards on the field to hand, and it's only 50 pesos each. So if you're on a budget, try finding a substitute. But remember, this is just the side deck. There's nothing that can beat the utility of Lightning Storm because it can destroy either monsters or spells and traps. That means it replaces 2 spaces on your on your side deck. So instead of having Lava Golem, I could have just run 3 copies of that, and then I could have put more cards on my side deck instead. But we're poor, so we have Hatronade. How did the deck perform? The deck in the TCG, I have seen people win and top in their locals in the TCG because there are their hand trap situation is a bit different from our situation here in the OCG. Here, there's this guy, Gren Maju. When he gets hit with infinite impermanence, he's basically zero. He would get hit with forbidden droplets, he becomes zero. So that's one problem. And then the the level 8s, when I summon a lot, I get to be the victim of a Nibiru. Or worse, they have too many spells and traps that even with Harpy's Feather Duster, even with Hatronade, sorry for the hairy arm, even with Twin Twisters, it's not enough. So what's the solution? We might go back to the original formula of the deck. I've had fun with Gren Maju, but I could really see more potential in the deck when it was in its old form. So I might go back to the old formula of the deck with some slight tweaks. Nonetheless, it was a fun week to use the deck. So again, thank you to Crush Cards for the idea of running Gren Maju in their deck. And hoping to see you again next time. And hopefully with better results. Bye bye.